CMOs were almost like the closest thing we have to celebrity in the advertising space, right? Because there are iconic CMOs that are known for brand campaign or turning a brand around. That has evolved a little bit. The complexity of the role and the complexity of managing multiple messages, multiple channels, and kind of running a 365 offense has changed the nature of the role to be much more focused on not just a campaign or a iconic move for the brand, to running and orchestrating a complex organization that requires designing not just the foundation, but designing every aspect of how that organization is going to operate.
Everyone, welcome back to the OnBase podcast. I'm your host, Chris Moody, and today we are diving into a topic that every CMO is thinking about right now: how to lead marketing in a world where creativity, operations, and AI are evolving faster than ever. And our guest today is someone who has lived at the center of that transformation. Michael Miller is the founder and head of creative at Consigliere. Michael has seen firsthand how CMOs win and where they get stuck, and has built a model designed to give marketing leaders the clarity, structure, and creative power they need to make bold moves. Michael, thanks for joining us today and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun. I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, well, I'm pumped to have you here. I appreciate it. And I'm really curious first, what inspired you to transition from leading major in-house marketing teams to founding your own firm? And what specific challenges were you seeing CMOs struggle with that you wanted to solve?
Yeah, I spent the lion's share of my career on the agency side as an ECD, but realistic when I was at Publicis Razorfish, and while advertising was a big part of what we were doing, really it was a lot of digital transformation. It was a lot of work to help brands kind of evolve the way that they were looking at marketing and advertising, and that's what led me to T-Mobile. So when I was at T-Mobile, really was part of re-engineering and reinventing the marketing organization inside of T-Mobile, and thinking about how are we going to operate inside of this newer kind of fast-paced world of both digital and social and traditional advertising all at the same time. And so throughout kind of that transition to the brand side from the agency side, still saw a lot of the same consistent issues, in that brands were struggling with not only how to operationalize or how to kind of evolve their operations, but they were struggling with, how am I getting the best creative out of the agencies that I'm working with? And where's the choke point kind of through that process? And that's really when I left T-Mobile, that was really the start between thinking about what I wanted to do next. And I wasn't really sure I wanted to go to a brand, or I wanted to go back to the agency side. And so I was connected with a lot of kind of former leaders that I had worked with, and a lot of colleagues that I had worked with in previous lives. And we'd all seen the same issue, that CMOs were struggling with, how do I evolve the operations of what we're doing so that we can work faster, work smarter, but then eventually, obviously, make the creative better. And they were, a lot of CMOs, a lot of companies we're working with were struggling with, I don't really have a confidant. I don't really have like a small group of folks that I can talk to that will just tell me the truth about what's happening with this group, or tell me the truth about what's happening in this part of the organization. And that was really the inspiration behind it, was that we knew that marketing leaders always need kind of someone that they can rely on to be almost an independent advisor, trusted counsel, to help kind of make some of these decisions, operational decisions, decisions about the organization, decisions about kind of creative strategy or marketing strategy. And so that's really what drove the kind of transition to thinking about starting our own thing and working with brands in that way.
Of that description, I was at a small firm called Topo before Gartner bought us, and I would always tell our clients we were revenue therapists, so kind of therapists for sales and marketing leaders, because that's what it was. It was They needed someone who was removed from their business, but understood it well enough to
Yeah.
tell them the truth, have the hard conversations, interview folks. So, yeah, that resonates very, very strongly with me. And one thing that you often say, I want to pick your brain on this. You often say that today's CMO is more of an architect than an icon.
Yeah.
I'm curious what that looks like in practice, especially as teams adapt to new technology, changing buyer expectations, and even the increasing speed of execution.
It's funny that, we think about CMOs were almost like the closest thing we have to celebrity in the advertising space, right? Because there are iconic CMOs that are known for brand campaign or turning a brand around or some kind of, large initiative that changed the direction of the scope of their success. And I think that has evolved a little bit to where CMOs now, the complexity of the role and the complexity of managing multiple messages, multiple channels, and kind of running a 365 offense has changed the nature of the role to be much more focused on not just a campaign or a iconic kind of move for the brand, to really running and orchestrating a complex organization that requires designing kind of not just the foundation, but designing kind of every aspect of how that organization is going to operate. And that's the part that I think, and it's almost, I think about it like a little bit of an architect, but then there's also an aspect of it where it's like CMOs kind of are house flippers too, where, they're only going to be, they might be at the brand for only a couple of years, and they need to retool the kitchen. They need to, they need to change the design of a certain space. They need to reorchestrate the way the house is, I don't know, the way the house is designed on the interior, and get it to a place where they can put it on the market and flip it. And I think there's a little bit of that too, where you've got to be able to orchestrate change that's short term, while at the same time creating the kind of the lasting change to the foundation, so that the progression of the brand really is focused on long-term success. So it's that balance between short-term wins and long-term success, and that requires both kind of this notion of like, I'm going to be kind of a house flipper and an architect at the same time, as opposed to just relying on that one kind of big campaign or that one kind of big brand moment. So that's the transition that we've seen in the CMO role over the last like 5 years is really the hard pressure on longer term success balanced with short term wins.
Yeah, I think that's a great insight. And, if you want to start a show, we could do love it or list it for marketing
Mhm.
team. So we kind of audit the team and then say,
Yeah.
like, you got to list it. You got to get rid of that, or love it. Here's a way to improve. I like that notion a lot, because the house flipping metaphor there, or analogy, you said like house flipping. So analogy, I think it's so true, because you have to come in and do a rapid assessment of what's working, what's not working, what do we need to change in the market, and change it now, and have the immediate pipeline conversations to satisfy the board and all the stakeholders and the
Right.
CEO. And then to your point, you also have to be thinking, who are we going to be 5 years from now? What's our exit strategy? As you work with CMOs and help them to accomplish that balance of the short term and the long term, what are the most common blind spots that you see that undermine performance, whether it's unclear briefs, misaligned metrics, siloed workflows, or something else?
Yeah. It's funny. The entry of a CMO into a new role always starts with kind of like a grand vision, and like CMOs are hired for a reason, right? They're hired to bring about change, and there's a new vision and a new strategy, et cetera. And so, you talk to a CMO on their way in their first, in their first couple of days, and there's a large idea and kind of a strategy behind the transformation that's going to occur. You talk to them a couple of days later, and they're just like busy fighting fires, right? And like all of a sudden, like all these ideas of things that they wanted to do, and longer term kind of evolving of the brand and longer term strategies have all basically been thrown out the window in short term firefighting. And I think that's the balance that we try to bring to the table is, working almost with CMOs, like we're trying to do their night job a little bit while they can, fight fires during the day. Because I think that, you hit it right on the head, that the lack of clarity in the briefs or lack of consistency in the briefs, right, is part of it. And the focus on what are the short-term metrics that we need to hit. I always like to think that inside of any brand, there's a ton of metrics that the SLT wants to look at, but realistically, there's one or two. There's one or two big metrics that are the things that most SLT tables are focused on. And the CMO has to figure out, how are we going to address and hit and move the needle against those specific metrics? And to me, that's the number one job. Like, that's the thing that that they have to focus on immediately. And so that's figuring out kind of how to address that specific challenge. It comes up with a lot of operational issues that get in the way of that. I always like to say, I think brands are struggling with operating models that are sometimes 30, 40 years old, right? That were designed for the way advertising used to work. And they're not designed for the speed and the kind of multi-channel nature of the way advertising works today. That idea that I used to just have this one brief that was focused on a campaign, and that execution would happen in kind of the traditional channels of the television and radio and print, et cetera, et cetera. And then when digital came around, we bolted on a new operating model for digital, and then a new operating model for social, and then a new operating model for influencers, and then a new operating model for experiential. And all of a sudden, I've got 7 different teams with 7 different operating models that all need 7 different briefs that are working with 25 different agencies. And everything has a level of complexity to it that means that the work is going to suffer somewhere along that spectrum. And that's really the challenge, right? Is how do we get back to an operating model that's more cohesive, to where the briefs are consistent, the agencies all feel like they're working together, as opposed to kind of in these siloed arenas. And that's the challenge that CMOs are facing. That's one of the biggest challenges CMOs are facing. And it's kind of like this, hidden under the radar challenge of shit, all the operating models are a mess. And so their firefighting that they have to do is literally running from one meeting and one kind of orchestration to the next, to the next, to the next, as opposed to the leadership team being able to orchestrate that together around kind of a consistent way to operate. It sounds complicated, and it is complicated, but that's kind of the way that we're looking at it, is that this is a long-term issue that needs some short-term solves and then some long-term redesign, right? To really look at the orchestration of kind of how brands operate on the marketing side.
It's kind of a $1 billion question. I will give you the out first. So when you were talking about the firefighting and solving things overnight, I think the benefit of a T-Mobile and lots of the CMOs you get to work with in your advertising experience, a lot of those CMOs are brand-driven CMOs, and they understand how to build a brand and to keep the brand story going forward. I think there's been a massive pendulum swing in tech specifically, maybe everywhere, to over-index on pipeline operators as CMOs. And with the pressure and the firefighting and the day-to-day, in many instances, and this is me going back to analyst days, I feel like a lot of CMOs, brand is number 22 on their list, and thinking about better creative. Everyone wants it. They want it to look good, but part of the bad briefs and some of that, I don't know if CMOs are budgeting the time to be more creative. So the $1 billion question, I guess, number one is, do you agree with that? And if yes or no, how do we make that better as CMOs? Because a lot of times, I'm just going to be brutally honest, I think a lot of marketing teams, it becomes an afterthought, and you may have some great creative things that go out, but it's not the forefront of how do we build the brand? How do we improve the brand? Now, if you're going through a rebrand, hopefully you get there, but then you settle in and it's like, let's not talk about that. Let's get pipeline.
Yeah. It's such a multi-layered answer to the, so I'll try to keep it brief. But no, I think that the first part is that there's not really enough time taken in advance to planning. There's not enough time put against planning and really devising a strategy that's going to work for consumers. That's the hardest part, is that, the upfront planning time actually creates more time for the creatives down the road, because having a sound approach, a sound strategy, a sound plan that's based on actual insights, that create the better brief that then will eventually lead to the better creative. Right now, we're trying to fix the creative. It's almost like trying to fix this podcast in post to make it sound awesome, right? Like we're like fixing the creative in post to like try to make it re-engineer it to what we now think the strategy is for the brand. Because 6 months ago, the strategy, we thought it was something different, but now we've changed our minds and now we're doing this. So we got to fix the creative to match with where we are today. And I think that's a real challenge for a lot of brands, is what is a lasting strategy and a lasting approach that then can cascade down to all of the different agencies that will really drive a better creative at that point. Because to your point, being focused on pipeline, being focused on the performance, being focused on driving the metrics, that's not going to go away. That's the nature of the role today. But having that balance of kind of an operational mindset with a brand and creative kind of view of the world, and really grounding both of those things in what does the customer actually want? What is our consumer actually looking for? How are we really going to speak with them, create experiences, or relate to them in a way that's going to endear our brand to them? That's the balance of the CMO's role. And I think that's the hard part when you're putting CMOs in place that are purely focused on pipeline or purely focused on performance, is you lose a little bit of that nuance of like the relatability to the consumer and the attention put to the quality and the quality of the creative and the attention to brand. So when we talk to the successful CMOs, have the ability to kind of straddle the line between those three elements of the consumer insights, the ability to focus on creative, but also really understanding the operational nature of the role, and the how that the orchestration of that is really the power behind the.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that was a really good answer. I mean, we tracked this at Topo, and the better brands always outperformed the average brands. And that's not a scientific test because it's hard to assess, but then you don't fund brand. So budget goes down. It's like chicken or the egg. So I think that's a good approach, that balance. I don't think we can publish a podcast if we don't say AI. We have to put in a few AI questions here, and it definitely feels like it's an interest topic that has moved to urgent for every single chief marketing officer. Yeah. What are the questions that you think marketing leaders should be asking right now as they integrate AI into their teams and workflows?
Yeah, we have an AI lab, like an AI division of our group as well, that we started a few years ago, and it's something that we consult on and deal with on a regular basis. I think philosophically, our approach has always been it's people plus AI, not AI instead of people. And I think that specifically in marketing, that's incredibly important. That all the marketers we talk to are strapped for time. Right? Like nobody has enough time to do this. Nobody, like I'm booked with meetings. I'm doing this. I've got my schedule's a mess. I can meet with you in 3 weeks, that kind of stuff. And like that's where AI can help. AI can help from a marketing standpoint in making time more accessible. That's always the metric in life that everybody wishes they had more of was time. That's the only thing worth anything. And I think that's what AI buys, specifically in marketing, but that's what AI buys you is time. That a lot of the things, brief writing, scheduling, operational management, a lot of that is that AI helps to streamline a lot of those things. And I think that's the main focus area that we're trying to promote, is really focusing on how can you streamline some of your operations, streamline some of the processes using AI, not how do you replace creatives or how do you, and I think that's the thing that everybody's kind of looking at, like how can I get use AI to cut my production costs. And it's like, that's not the area that's the most focus, or that's not where your big drain is. Your big drain isn't on production costs. Your big drain is in the operational inefficiency of your organization. That's the piece that AI can help. That's the piece where AI should be deployed. As creatives and marketers, you see enough AI slop in all of our feeds, right? That we know that it can be done. Is it great? Not always. Is it fascinating? Yeah, it's fascinating. But AI to replace creativity is kind of a bit of a misstep, but I think everybody's starting to feel that. So CMOs can really, have the opportunity to look at, how they're deploying AI in a way that's going to create time and create efficiency for their organization and for their people. That balance, that balance for people to actually be able to get their jobs done effectively comes with having enough time to really think about things and really think things through and give full attention to the task at hand. And I think that's where we see from where we're consulting, at least on the AI has a power to really help.
Yeah, I'm putting an action item on this. I mean, I need to build out an AI interrogation to build a better brief, right? Just to your point, if we go upstream, man, that's such an opportunity. Why haven't I done that already? Just you saying it, I was going, AI is actually really good at asking those questions. What should we better document? One thing I'm very, very curious about. I have a lot of friends who have just started new CMO gigs. We have a new CMO here at DemandBase.
Yeah.
How should CMOs rethink talent and org structure in an AI-driven world?
It's such a hard question too, because it's almost the number one thing that I feel like in the last 6 months, it's one of the main things that we get asked about is, the rethinking organizational structure and based on what can we do with AI, or what can, how is this going to impact the role, different people's roles, et cetera, et cetera. I think I'll answer it, but with a non-answer, which is the org structure piece of it really is almost the downstream thing to look at. It's not the first thing. The first thing is process, operations, and the quality of the work. If I'm in the process of fixing or understanding where my organization is falling down, where the process, where we're having process issues, or where kind of from an operational standpoint, where am I bleeding time, bleeding effort, or bleeding costs? That's going to help me better understand the organization that I'm going to need to go forward. Designing an organization without really understanding the end-to-end process of how work gets from ideation all the way to execution, you're just going to recreate the problem in a new way. And I think that's the struggle that we've been focused on is, the short-term wins are non-negotiable. If you don't deliver in the short term for an organization, especially a new CMO, if you're not delivering in the short term, your lifespan is going to be short at that brand. So that's a non-negotiable. But at the same time, working on understanding kind of where the operational pitfalls are inside of the organization over, the first 3 to 6 to 9 months in a role, that's going to benefit you longer term, because then you're actually able to address those issues with an organization structure that makes sense. And it also helps with okay, I know where to deploy AI because I see where our problems are, as opposed to I'm just going to deploy AI across the board and hope it works out, right? Because I think that's a lot of that's you're getting SLT pressure into the marketing organization of I want to see where we're using AI. It's we're using it everywhere, and hopefully, we'll see some positive impacts. And I think as with anything, any new technology, you see that, and that's okay. That's the nature of our industry, and it's the nature of kind of the way brands operate. But a thoughtful implementation of AI into the real struggle areas of process and operations is the part that approach is really going to win in the long term. That has been our opinion from the start, but as we've seen AI kind of be implemented inside of organizations, that is still our opinion. This is the way to kind of do it in a measured and really thoughtful implementation of different tools.
Yeah, I think that's great. I wrote down process, operations, quality of work. If you saw me jotting down. I was not zoning out. I was taking notes because I have an assignment now to help my new boss understand the work we're doing. And that's such a good lens where I'm thinking, oh, I'll add a second slide and just talk about things going well in process, opportunities for improvement, operations, same thing, quality of work, same thing. So talk about that versus just here's the people and what the people do. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool. One thing I'm curious about, I mean, I love the people leading AI, people plus AI. We talk about that a lot too. I think the
Mhm.
people will be the biggest differentiator as we get better with AI because there's so much knowledge AI is going to solve for. But then who are you working with? How are they thinking creatively, strategically, all the things?
Yeah.
How can AI unlock better creative output instead of replacing it?
One of the areas that I love that I personally love it for is for concepting and spec work. Being able to actually, I think back on, my agency days of pitching and trying to walk into the room and explain to a new client or trying to walk into a room, explain a new campaign to, and here are my boards and here are my, and I think the ability to use AI to actually mock up, spec, show show the vision of what I have in my head, show the vision of what our team has come up with, not in a ready for production or ready for broadcast kind of way, or ready to put out in the market, but in a way of like, this is what we're thinking. This is the vision that we have. This is the way we see this progressing. I think that, CMOs should be demanding that their agencies come with spec work that's fully visualized. It doesn't have to be fully realized, but visualized for sure. Because I don't want to, and Chris, this is where I'm going to sound like an angry old advertising person, but I do not want to read another manifesto. I really don't, ever. Enough. Like, show me what you mean. Don't read to me this, pontificating about what my brand means. Like, I want to see what your vision is for what it looks like. And I think CMOs are kind of in that same boat of like, if I've got a new agency in, or if I've got a new team that's talking to me about a campaign or this is what we're going to do in social, this is what we're going to do here. Show me what it looks like. And I think that's where the tools for AI really can enhance the creativity from that perspective. It allows me to very quickly put my ideas into a visualization to where I can show you what we're thinking and show you what we're talking about. That's really powerful.
Awesome. Yeah, note to self, stop working on the manifesto. No, just kidding. I have done them before, but I totally get your point. And, I mean, just the ability to conceptually show things is
Yeah,
such a better start than
absolutely.
read all my words.
Yeah. We worked at T-Mobile. I had an agency that would go out and shoot spec work and bring it in. It was more of a Hollywood production group than an agency, and they would bring in spec work and show it as part of their pitch. They were like, "This is what we want to do." We went out and shot it on, we used phones and whatever, and we just went out and shot it and brought it in. And I think the ability to bring, that's a powerful move, and the ability to do that and come into the room with a vision for what we're going to do or what they want to show. That's really, it creates an impact for creative agencies, and AI is the power of AI to be able to do that and help with that. It cannot be underestimated. It's great for that. Like, I would
Totally.
never rush it into broadcast, but it's great for that.
Yeah. No, I think that's perfect. I mean, it fits with how our brains work too. We
Yeah.
need to see something and believe it. I know you've never had this happen because you've never had a bad client, but there are times where creative gets blamed for poor performance. I know that's never happened to you, but I know that your stance is that usually the root problem is operational, not necessarily creative. So
Uh-huh.
the two-part question, why does that happen and how can CMOs shift the conversation?
Why does
Creative getting blamed when
oh,
performance is poor. Not that that's ever happened with your clients ever.
no, so the organizational and process and operational problems roll downhill. And if I've got an organizational issue, or if I've got, I don't have the right talent, I don't have a good process to where the thing that's in the CMO's head is translated down to the agency in the right way. I think and not to let agencies off the hook, right? But I think that a lot of times the call is coming from inside the house. So when I see bad creative, you can almost like the time when I see the most advertising is when I watch the NFL. And I think that's everybody in America, right? That's when we see the most advertising when we're watching live sports. And I can see where in any particular ad and I can watch that ad and I can see like, okay, this is what the creative agency was going to do. And this is where they got talked out of it. And this is and these are this is the way it got watered down by whatever, these, people or what. And I think that, that happens a lot when you look at kind of the creative space. Brands often will pull back, and try to do, a little bit more. I don't know. They're not asking for the creative that pushes the envelope so much anymore. At least not, and not in broadcast, and we're seeing it kind of pull back in social as well. But the agencies always kind of get left holding the bag if the performance starts to suffer, right? If I don't have the metrics to walk into the SLT, a lot of times it's the ads didn't work or what we're doing in social isn't working, right? But from my perspective, that a lot of times that's a strategic issue and not a creative issue. Like, yes, on occasion the creative's bad, right? But it's the easiest scapegoat because it's the most visible, right? It's harder to go, well, we misinterpreted our audience data, so therefore the brief kind of was off in this way, so our messaging was off. Explaining the trickle down effect of misinterpreting certain data that led to creative that was off is a lot more difficult than just firing the agency or just blaming the agency for the work. And also, like, I hate to say it, but a lot of times agencies seem like they are expendable. And I disagree with that approach. I think a good agency relationship is invaluable, right? Like, anytime you have an agency that you have a solid relationship with, the ability to be able to or the time it takes to create that relationship is worth something. And so that's where I struggle, because it is no one gets a pass. But a lot of times I think that like I said earlier, the call is coming from inside the house on this, and the agencies a lot of times get left holding the bag, and it isn't fair. But, well, I will say one thing though. Like, that said, like, agencies need to step up their creative game as well. Like, so many creatives have left, so many seasoned creatives have left some of the larger agencies, and I think you need that kind of leadership and that experience inside of agencies to actually bring along new creatives to make sure that the agencies are delivering. So it's a little bit of a two-sided problem that I don't see getting fixed easily and very quickly.
Yeah, well, this is another two-sided problem. This is the last big question, then we have a but you've worked with both world-class creative teams and the very disciplined operational organizations. What have you learned about the balance between those two forces in a way that supports better work?
In all honesty, like, operations is the secret behind great creative every single time. Anytime you see a company or a group or a brand that is putting out great work, when you look behind it, they have sound operational hygiene and probably a pretty decent process for how work is both initiated, reviewed, and how it finds its way to market almost every time. Because the part of how work gets it's the part of creativity that gets overlooked every single time, is the quality and the cohesiveness of the operations and process that lead up to delivering or kind of, creating the execution. In almost every instance, you find a sound organization where the operational people understand that their role is really important in making the creative work great. And I think that was something inside of the organizations that I was fortunate enough to lead. We always made sure that the operational folks, the program managers, the resource folks, everybody understood their role in great work, and everybody understood how important what they were doing was downstream to the execution and the ability to really put great work out into the world. I also think that's why a lot of times those operational roles should sit inside of the creative, inside of that organization, and not in some other organization, or inside of the marketing organization, not in a centralized PMO kind of area. They have to understand the role that they play in putting out great work and how important it is. And so that to me is that's where the balance is. It is a symbiotic relationship that both are dependent upon the success of one another without fail every time.
Awesome. I love that. So it's not just heroics and serendipity. That's
Yeah.
good to know. No, my MBA is supply chain. So that made my brain very happy. You talking about how operations lead to the great output. I have two very quick hitters for you. We can call it lightning round, whatever you want. We can insert jazzy sound effects maybe. But the first, what are the favorite tools or technologies that you're using?
With this is so self-centered, but we just recently built a AI tool that we're using with clients that is a cultural insights aggregator across social. And so we've been using that tool with a lot of our clients. And I have to be honest, like I am constantly blown away by what our team has built. The ability for this tool, it's called Clammer, and it's in beta right now, but the ability that AI has to aggregate and understand social insights and social indicators and what's happening in the social space, and derive insights from that, and explain them in just natural language and real language that people can understand. The power of that is cannot be underestimated. That is a really good use of the technology. And so from that aspect, I think, I'm blown away by what our team has built, but I'm really excited for new brands and other brands to use it. And we're going into launch in a couple of weeks, and so I'm really excited about that. But from a technology standpoint, that's been the newer things that are being built with AI. Some of them just blow me away with what they can do and how they can help make my life easier. That's the real win is finding the success in those tools that help with kind of your everyday.
I love that one. Yeah, let us know when that launches. We'll be sure to promote that one too. That's cool. Relevant to my interests, I will say. All right. And then this is the most important question of all, Michael. How can everyone get in touch with you after this episode?
You know my cell? Like they can just text. I don't respond to all.
I wouldn't put that. You never know. With all the AI tools now, we could have robots calling you nonstop.
I know. That's what happened. I think, what was it? A few months ago, I had something like 400 mortgage calls of people wanting to sell me a mortgage. It happened like 7 or 8 times a day. I was like, this is madness. So yes, that is happening. No, honestly, LinkedIn is always the best. But I'm pretty easy to get. Miller@consigliere.co is my easiest way to reach me directly. So
outstanding. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been extremely helpful. I have some notes that I'm going to take to work too.
You bet. And Chris, the easiest way to get a hold of me is if you're in Las Vegas, just drop me a line. Like I'm always up for meeting out and going out for a dinner or a drink or something.
All right, I will take you up on that next time I'm there. Well, thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you. This was really great. I appreciate it.
Thanks.